Hey guys, in this video I'm going to show you how I make colored clays with mason stains. So I'm going to be working with these mason stains. I bought them at Brackers in Lawrence, Kansas, and so in the video I'll be working with some of these, like a peacock green. It tells you what they're made out of. Some of the ingredients are cobalt, chromium, aluminum. The one thing that I did find out after rolling out these colored clays in some really thin slabs, which is what I do for my work, that adding these did reduce some of the plasticity in the porcelain. So it cracked a lot easier, it ripped a lot easier. A lot of times I like to stretch and fold my really thin slabs like they were paper or fabric, and so that wasn't as easy to do with this colored clay as it is to do just with the plain porcelain. I also tried to throw on the potter's wheel with it, and that seemed to work a little bit better. So just keep that in mind when you're working with these colored clays. For the video, I'm going to be making some in this peacock green color, which I think will be really easy to see. I've seen colored clay made by wedging in this with the clay, which you can do, but that's kind of hard. And also, you still, no matter how well you wedge, you still get some marbling in there. And I really don't want any marbling at all. So what I'm going to do is actually make a colored slip with the blender and then dry it out. So you can see that I've already done this with the blue and the pink. So that's my blue and pink slip. It's drying out on the plaster bat. And so in just a little bit, maybe an hour or two, that bat will soak up enough of the moisture in the slip that it will be regular clay, and I can just wedge it and use it. So I'm planning on using it to roll out some colored slabs. Whenever I make slip in general, I always start with just plain water in the blender, and then what I do is I slowly add chunks of clay, because if you start with the clay and add water, the blender just has to do too much work. And then I'm just going to add spoonfuls of this in, and when I get it the color that I like it and all blended, then I pour it out and do that. So here we go. So just slowly add one chunk at a time. I'm eventually going to add all this clay in, but just so you can see the color kind of starting to take effect, I'm going to go ahead and add in this so it'll get blended up really well. And then I'm going to add more slip because I think that's better for blending than adding this at the last minute. And then, of course, the more of the white porcelain, this is just a cone 5 porcelain that I'm working with, the more of this I add to it after that, it will get a little bit lighter. But let's go ahead and add this.
The first thing I had to do was figure out what exactly clay was. Aluminum and silicon ions bonded into tiny thin plates by interconnecting oxygen and hydroxyl ions. So we have these plates that are tough but flexible, as it says here, that can, I would assume, slide with respect to one another and can move with respect to one another. I go on reading and I see that in this type of clay, kaolinite, however it's pronounced, that we get a thin film of water molecules between those plates, and hydrogen bonds actually are what are holding those plates to each other. Now in chemistry, hydrogen bonds are in some ways named inappropriately because it's not an actual chemical bond like an ionic bond or a covalent bond. It is rather an intermolecular force versus an intramolecular force, and it is a force you get when you have hydrogen bonded to a relatively electronegative atom, and in this case oxygen. And so you end up with a hydrogen ion kind of sitting out there, a hydrogen charge sitting out there, and you can see that positive there. And so you get an attraction between positive and negative, between opposite charges. And that's a hydrogen bond. And it's the strongest of the intermolecular forces, the forces that hold molecules to each other versus holding a molecule together within itself. And we all know that when you allow clay to dry, it's a reversible process. In fact, I've had my son and his friends at a cliff face at the local lake we kayak over to, and they take the rocks, as they call them, and pound them into powder and add water, and they make their own clay and then create stuff out of that and bring it home, and then if you crush it back up, you reverse it. However, when you do heat it up enough, you get a chemical reaction, which is shown right here. And I would encourage any of you that if you have students that are really into the sciences to actually look into the actual chemistry of what's going on here. But this is a model they're showing of how these plates are attached to each other with those hydrogen bonds, which are shown in here. And if you scroll up here, you can see more information. But you have these plates, and they can slide with respect to one another, which is what gives clay its plasticity. Now, as that water goes away, you lose that plasticity because no longer can they slide with respect to one another. So my guess here is that those coloring agents are disrupting the hydrogen bonding that is allowing this to take place. They're disrupting this thin layer, this thin film of water in here. That it's disrupting that, and so the clay is losing some of its plasticity because it doesn't seem that adding more water leads to the plasticity. It doesn't fix it, and so the coloring agents themselves are having an effect in disrupting this hydrogen bonding. An example of that would be adding dish soap, dish detergent to water. You can get water which has a lot of hydrogen bonding in it. You can add it to a cup and get the water to actually be above the level of the cup without overflowing. And once you add a single drop of dishwashing detergent or dishwash soap to it, you will diminish those intermolecular attractive forces, those hydrogen bonds, and the water, that water that is domed up will flatten out and spill because you have disrupted the hydrogen bonds.